What's up? It's your boy Carcino here, and everybody asks me all the time to do the breakup of Death Row, and a lot of people don't know the history of Death Row Records. And Death Row is a small label, just like Ruthless Records, but it needs someone to help distribute. And that's where there was an opportunity when Jimmy Iovine came into the forefront where they can control their distribution. They were able to buy a part, and Interscope Records would allow them to distribute their own music, because at that time gangster rap was not part of Interscope's circle. Now Dre and Suge had went and started Death Row Records. Suge and basically put up the money for it, and when they did, Dre was equal partners with Suge. You know, they were all going to get their money. And that's what Suge's whole purpose was when he created the label. Was like, I'm going to take care of the artists. These guys making all this money off us. So Suge wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of that needed to be taken care of in the game. As far as like his artists, and paving a new way. Just some of the methods he did going about doing it wasn't the way you take in this business aspect. Now, to do this, you need to go through the history of Interscope Records. Interscope Records started out with Ted Fields, and once you got Ted Fields involved, and he brought along partners, was it Tom Wiley and the guy we all know today, Jimmy Iovine. So Jimmy and basically them, they just kept putting out their own music, and what they were putting out was borderline gimmicky. It was a rough couple of years. They wasn't turning in any profits. They had Geraldo and Marky Mark. That was the only biggest songs they had. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. And Geraldo's Rico Suave. You know, those were their only hits that they had. So, at that time, they were in need of help. And they decided to hire, because Ted Fields went to him personally and said, I want you to hook up with these producers that I have, but I want to put you in charge of acquiring talent. They hired the man who's really responsible for the whole growth of Interscope Records. He's a black man named John Mcclane. Don't confuse him with John Mcclane from Die Hard. In this business, he does die hard. He's the Al Heyman of the music business, basically. He's very quiet, but he knows music. And the reason why he doesn't talk so much, because he's a listener. And he listens to music. He understands it. His mom was like, she was a choreographer. She played music, like professional instruments and like orchestra and organization. So he's been working with Janet Jackson when he was at A&M Record, you know, and he was a very wealthy man leaving in 1990 to go over to Interscope Records. So in like 91 or something like that, he went over to Interscope, and the first thing he did was say, they didn't know how to recruit talent, especially in the urban market field, which controlled and dominated the music business. Whoever had the urban market was going to rule the music business. That's just how it was. And the urban market didn't really get with the funky bunch. So all they had was Tupac, who did Apocalypse Now. He was the first artist Interscope had at that time, but they didn't understand how to promote him or what to do with him. So when John Mcclane came along in 91, 92, he said, okay, this is what I want to do. He went out in the field, and he hardly ever was in the office because he's a hands-on man. He's the kind of guy that goes and see what's going on. So he talks to Dick Griffey, but Dick Griffey. And he's the guy that runs the LA studio where all the artists will come in and try to record. And he met Dr. Dre. And Dre was working on the Chronic there. And he had about, it was about like 6 songs. He had Let Me Ride. He did the soundtrack. He did the Deep Cover soundtrack already. And he had G Thing on there. And then he had, it was about 6, 7 songs on there. But I think D's Nuts was on there. It was about 6, 7 songs on there. Maybe even more, but maybe like 6 songs. And John Mcclane listened to him and said, I need to take this to Interscope Records. I'm going to play this for Jimmy and Ted Fields and see if we can get them to finance Death Row Records. Because I want this record to be with Interscope. Because this got the potential to be monumental. Because John is all about sound. Him and Drake clicked instantly because they understood. You know what? He hears what it sounds like and said, I like where this album is going. And this got the feel to be something epic. So, he went to Jimmy Iovine and Ted Fields. And then Tom's there. They all listening to the album. And they're like, And they're like, well, but he said, who was that? Ted Fields didn't want to do it. Ted Fields is like, okay, but I don't know about cutting a label deal with Suge Knight and Dr. Dre. I don't want to cut a label deal. We've got enough labels right now. So he's like, I don't know. Maybe later, let's see what this album does, and then if his next album is something, then, we'll come back. But Mcclane was like, if we let this guy go and they shop this somewhere else, somebody's going to pick them up. I guarantee it. So, right then and there, they were like, okay. They got everything in motion. And there it was. Boom. They got the deal with Dre. Went back. Jimmy Iovine, as you saw in the movie, he goes and talks to Dre and Suge. And this is where Jimmy and Ted was basically going to work out the contract deal to get Dre released from Ruthless Records. And they did that. So at this point, Death Row is at the top of the game because they come out the gate. They selling like 25 million records, and And I mean, like, over the next 3, 4, 5 years, they got all these records sold, and they're dominating the industry at this point. So Suge is getting all this money, and with this money comes power, comes a lot of ego. And one thing is, everything seems to always break up in-house. Now, there were a couple of incidents where inside the circle, you got people seeing the money come in, they seeing the lights, they seeing Death Row, and they thinking we all should be millionaires. And where's our millions of dollars? And then you got people that's early on that worked on the Chronic and other albums, they get disgruntled. Like RBX. He was the first one to be, I don't know, man, like, I ain't going with this, and Suge is this, and Suge saying that, but man, I ain't seeing it. And he stepped, and he wasn't allowed to be in the studio no more. Nobody was allowed to associate with him. It was like, cut him off, he's a cancer. We got to get rid of him now, because all he's going to do is cause disruption. But he was asking questions like, well, Dre, you part co-owner, you know, why is this way? Why is that way? When my album coming out? And blah, 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 you know, so he had to get released. And in the Dog Pound, you know, they had to retaliate. And that's when they had that song, what was that? That song on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack where they talked about the incident. Man, he wouldn't even squawk back. He would have got a dog crack. I second the motion. You was dropped from the cliff. So, and that's why we X'd your bitch ass from the pound, cause he wouldn't even squawk back. Yeah, I remember that song, baby. But it's a great song. But after that, things start happening in house where deals was getting done a certain way, but Suge was fighting for his employees. So he wanted things to be done right. Like Jimmy Iovine at that time, man, he was in love with Death Row. Death Row was Suge Knight and Jimmy Iovine. They were the coolest buddies ever at that time. You couldn't tell them anything. John Mcclane, all of them. They went to Jimmy's house, had dinner, sat down, gave him anything he wanted. It's like, hey, man, you want dinner? Here's dinner. We got this for you. You got that. They used to have these, in the backyard, they used to have those sport games they used to play. They used to have a softball game. They used to have football. So Suge's like, man, I ain't running around there, man. My knees. I ain't going to be running, doing all that running. So what they did was they had a football game. And then Suge was out there blocking, knocking people out. But it was all fun. Everything was fun and joyous and laughing. And more success came more problems. Once Suge's friend got killed out there in New York, things were starting to change and unravel once he decided to go after Bad Boy Records. Now, Clive is they're friends with Jimmy. They might work for different companies, but they're still friends. And to go after one of his label mates, it was starting to create a friction between the two. And there was a couple of incidents where there's the Andre Harrell situation. There's a lot of different situations that's popping up that it's causing Interscope to be like, oh man, this now we got to deal with this situation. You know, it's a lot of problems that's popping up out of the blue that they never had to deal with when they dealt with other artists. Now it's like we got problems. You know, with these lawsuits. But Suge normally was fighting people for contracts. He would throw charity foundations and charitable events in the city. Suge would go all the way down to the city and say to Compton, charity for the children. Boom, here's the money. Here's 100,000 here. Here's 50,000 for this. Rebuild this. Here's free food, turkey for the Thanksgiving. All this stuff. None of this stuff even was brought up about Suge, because people so used to talking about the negative, but he was actually doing some good in the community as far as kicking the money back, you know, paying for people's funerals. He did a lot of stuff as far as Death Row giving back to the community. And what Suge did is he owned his portion of the business because of the success. They could distribute their own music. So even though they was with Interscope, they was a distributor as well. They bought that end of the business. So that little key gave him access to a lot of power, especially when they start selling so many records early on. And everybody kind of turned their eye to it, and then they realized it was going to be a big problem because they couldn't control Suge Knight. And when Suge, like certain monies weren't there, that should have been there. And this was the good thing about it, because Suge was making them own up to what they were supposed to be doing. He wasn't asking to give him something that wasn't his. You see, people applaud Ice Cube when he go in the office with the bat, but Suge Knight go in the office to get his money. Suge's a bully. So it's all about the perception of it. Suge Knight went in there to get what was owed to him. Did some people get hurt? Probably. But I'm just saying, he went there to get what was owed to him. You know, some of the methods and measures he used were because he's used to being from the streets. So when you've been disrespected, you react to it in a different way. But he's in a whole different circle, a different bubble. They deal with things differently. People like, well, we didn't mean it like that. Why does he take that so seriously? Because he's from the streets. So with the Andre Harrell situation too, you know, you got Clive that's not happy about the situation, and then, you know, you got John, who's always out. They never really had a problem with John Mcclane. They'll tell John, like, man, what's going on? And John be like, well, you got to talk to Jimmy and them in the office in the finance department about anything and the money. So the finance department and Interscope stayed getting whooped up. Jimmy got so spooked, Jimmy moved. So Jimmy got a whole new house. Nobody knows where Jimmy's new house is. Jimmy is like, I don't want Suge Knight coming around me. You know, and he's like, this guy he's a bad guy. Like, I didn't know he was this. I never knew who this guy was. Now Jimmy's nervous about being around Suge Knight. So all of a sudden, they signed Tupac Shakur to the label. Okay? At this point, everything's still okay a little bit. You know, Interscope is still riding with him. Then they see Jimmy sparingly. He was sparingly coming to the office because Suge was always coming down there and doing what he do. Now Universal is a part, they own Interscope. So they go to the finance department Suge come down there, and they tell him, like, Universal hasn't cut the checks. When Universal cut the check, you're going to get your check. That's just as cool. We going to send it over expressly. So Suge was like, I'll go to Universal myself. And then he went to Universal, and they wouldn't let him in the building. So some things happened. So the president, Doug Morris of Universal Records, allegedly received a very serious threat from Suge Knight. So now, anytime Doug come to the office, Doug was very paranoid about that. There was wall-to-wall security. Doug had 15 people come and grab him from home to the office. Security at the place was not even, you wouldn't even believe the type of security they had at Universal at that time. So when Tupac arrived at Death Row Records, Dre is not happy about it. Everybody thought Dre was all excited about because he saw the movie. That's not true, because this was not Suge's role. Dre's job was to hire the talent and to sign people. What was Suge doing signing people? Suge was taking more and more control of Death Row, of all the procedures, things that he said he didn't want to do. He was supposed to be behind the scenes. Now he's putting himself more out in front. So Dre's like, man, this is what I'm talking about, man. I'm gone. And he was like, man, I try to stick it out with Pac and all this, but he didn't want to sign Tupac. He didn't feel like this was the thing to do. So once Pac come in and all these dudes coming in with him, and he had signed like a couple other artists too. And that's when he was like, man, see, this is what I'm talking about. So they working on the record, and it was California Love. And Dre had all his verses on California Love. And he basically gave the record to Tupac. And Pac was talking very disrespectfully about him, loud enough for him to hear it some of the times. And Suge just laughing. You know, he just laughing, even though he talking about Dre and cracking on him. Suge just cracking up laughing with him. And Dre and Tupac had the same situation because of the girl that used to be down with him. They used to sing with him, you know, that Tupac used to have on Thug Life before she started dating Dre. So, at that time, things started to, you know, bubble up to the point where Dre couldn't be there no more. And she told Dre, like, you know, they talking about you. They was filming a video for California Love, and he just like, that's alright, because I already got my deal. I'm gone. I'm through with this. I'm out of here. And once he said that, it was over. He's like, they had this. Tell Suge and the rest of them, I'm going to come back. He came back, got his reels, and he was like, I ain't gonna even say goodbye. I'm gone. They ain't never gonna see me again. And true to his word, Jimmy had already secured a location for him to go hide out and work on his album and get himself out of that Death Row situation and work out his deal with his label exclusively on Interscope and separate himself from Suge Knight. So they come out with Tupac record already go through the roof, you know, so it was like, oh, okay, great, this is perfect. You know, he was already one of our first artists at Interscope, so Interscope is loving this Tupac thing, and Tupac is selling, he's selling 5 million, This is unbelievable. Tupac this and this. All Eyes on Me, double CD. They're enjoying the success of the album. So, all of the success and all this is going great. And the company's happy. They ready to come out with more projects with Tupac and this and that. Then Tupac's untimely death. And Interscope just, after that, they had just had it. They had just completely had it. And to them, it was too dangerous to have Suge Knight on the streets with that kind of power. And allegedly, when Suge had to go to court, they had him on parole. They had an investigator. You know, they got people that take care of things like this to go through his records, find out if he's violated anything. Is he on parole? They found out he's on parole. And they trying to find a way to get Suge out of his position, to get him out of to Death Row Records, where they can have him separated from it and, you know, just take away the power that he has. And they found an angle with this parole violation for kicking Orlando Anderson. Out of all the things Suge may or may not have done, they finna give him 9 years in prison for kicking a guy. Because that's all. You could barely see Suge do anything on that tape. And that's blatantly honest. You can see it's like he's just moving his leg. You could barely see it through the pixels. But that was enough to convict a man for 9 years? You knew what time it was. It was a setup. That whole trial was a setup. It just showed you what kind of power they had and what they could do. Then when Suge got out, they was going to make sure Death Row was never, ever going to come back. Never. Because during his time of incarceration, Notorious B.I.G. gets murdered. And people are looking at, man, this is Suge Knight and da-da-da-da with Death Row. And what's his name's just like, I'm gone. John Mcclane's like, I'm going back to A&M where I was started. I can't have any parts of this. I'm leaving. So his departure opened the door for you know, they gave him a piece of the company, you know, but he took $1 million a year salary and went over there to A&M and started putting out hits over there. He signed Ice Cube. He had Corrupt signed over there. He was, you know, getting ready to do his couple of deals. And he just didn't want to have anything to do with this no more. This had gotten way too crazy. The music industry wasn't safe no more. Interscope became like a battleground with all these armed guards and people with guns everywhere. It just wasn't safe no more. And Suge's locked up, but it's like the record label's having trouble keeping its artists and some people there and release music because they got all these investigations going on in the company and where the money come from, and they was trying to disassemble Death Row Records. That's all it was. Interscope made it our plan to never let Suge Knight get back in power again. That was the thing. We can't let him have that position. Again, we got to dismantle that company. And everything you've seen happen to Death Row Records since Tupac's demise has been to take apart Death Row Records and never let it get back up there. big money was spent to make sure it never came back into power. They could not have Suge Knight attached to any of it. As you can see, you know, he's trying to do stuff to get his label back. They give Eminem rights to Tupac's music. Eminem? You know, I'm just like, Pac would have had a fit about that. Then they got rights to Biggie's music when they got Bad Boy Records over on Interscope Records. So now he's got Sean Puffy Combs, his new buddy and partner, and he likes Sean Combs. So once he got Puffy from Clive, and now they got Biggie's music and Tupac's music. Oh, we could put it together. Now we could do an Eminem, Biggie, and Tupac song. That would be great. In the meantime, let's keep crushing Suge Knight. Let's keep putting a foot on his throat. Let's hold him down, because we can't let him get back in power again. So that's what happened to Death Row. Then here come this woman saying she never got paid. And, of course, the courts is going to make sure she won her case, so that Death Row Records would go up and she could take over and then get sold and go to bankruptcy and be dismantled. That's all they wanted to do, was take that man out of power. Everything was done in precision to do that, so that people could start feeling safe again. But when you start to take stuff from Suge, I wouldn't feel safe about that, label or no label. I'm just saying. But that's what happened to Death Row Records. So now you know the full out truth about what happened. I'm out.